Thank you. Senator Barrasso.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Torello, congratulations. I want to congratulate you on this nomination. It's so clear your decades of public service, both in the House of Representatives and at the Federal Trade Commission, have prepared you well for the role which you've been nominated. As Assistant Secretary of Financial Resources, you're going to advise Secretary Kennedy on the Department of Health and Human Services budget, financial management, grant programs, and you're going to oversee their implementation. So this one big, beautiful bill that we just passed included a dedicated effort to help support rural health care through the creation of, as you know, the Rural Health Transformation Program. This program is going to provide over $500 million to each state to support our hospitals, clinics, and health centers. It's going to help ensure that health care facilities across rural and frontier Wyoming are going to continue to provide high-quality care close to home. Congressional Republicans designed this program specifically to avoid the red tape and the bureaucratic delays that often happen with government funding, so states can actually access these funds and quickly put them to work. So last week I was in Wyoming, visited with a number of healthcare providers, including the head of the Wyoming Hospital Association, and the questions they ask is, as you oversee the distribution of this Rural Health Transformation Program funds, how are you going to ensure that states can access the funds efficiently?
Well, thank you, Senator, for the question, and thank you on this topic that is near and dear to my heart. I grew up in Cooperstown, New York. My mother was a nurse at our local hospital. My first job as a teenager was volunteering there. And healthcare has been a passion of mine. And when I was at the FTC, I looked at lots of healthcare mergers in the rural space and looked at healthcare markets in general. And when I'm enthusiastic because of Secretary Kennedy's support for bolstering care in rural markets. The way I approach things as an antitrust lawyer is looking at how we can get the best quality services and care, most choices to people, to the consumers, at the lowest and most effective prices. So I will lean into the operating divisions that are handling the distribution of the funds and evaluating that, and bringing my competition principles to bear so that we can get the best quality solutions. Not all rural markets are created equal. They have different needs, and weighing in on those things and bringing, again, looking at my background, looking at different healthcare markets and hospital markets will be a priority of mine, and bringing that to the staff there.
Well, it sounds like then I can count on you to commit to working closely with the states as this program is rolled out.
I would expect that working with the states, and again, through the operating divisions that already have those relationships, to bolster the effectiveness of those.
Thank you. Mr. Switzer, I want to talk about Chinese uranium. You have considerable experience with China. I think it gives you unique insight into how they operate in global markets. I'm particularly concerned with how their deceptive trade practices, of which you're very familiar, threaten our critical nuclear supply chain. In 2024, Congress banned Russian uranium imports to protect our national security, but now it seems that China is helping Russia circumvent the ban and undermine American nuclear fuel producers. We ban Russia, Russia gives it to China, China to the United States. Just this year, China has already exported over 150,000 pounds of uranium to the United States. We have clear evidence that this is Russian-enriched uranium going to China, which they then dump into the U.S. market. So we're just kind of swapped one adversary for another. Wyoming has the resources, the workforce to rebuild the American nuclear supply chain. State-subsidized Russian and Chinese uranium undermines our domestic industry. Can you commit to working with Congress to end this Chinese circumvention of our Russian uranium ban? And do you have any thoughts on the matter?
Yes, Senator, thank you for the question. It's a very important issue. What I'm concerned about the entirety of the critical mineral supply chain, including uranium. I commit to working with Congress. I think there are aspects of this that USTR can do. There are aspects of this that maybe executive order could look at. But there are always, especially if you want sort of binding long-term solutions, Congress is where you look to find those kinds of solutions. So like Ambassador Greer, I commit to working with you and finding any way possible to address these issue sets. We need the ability to supply critical minerals, including uranium, in the United States wherever possible, to process those profitably wherever possible. And where not possible, we want to be sourcing those from friendly nation states and allies and partners.
Great. Last week, we had Secretary Wright, Secretary of Energy in Wyoming, since you mentioned critical minerals in addition to uranium, for the groundbreaking of the first critical minerals and elements mine in the country in 70 years. And my concern, of course, is we don't want to be dependent upon anybody for that. So how will you work with our Asian allies to counter China's domination in terms of global critical minerals?
Yeah, I've had the opportunity. I was in charge of our economic relationship with Japan. I was the economic affairs chief on the Japan desk many years back, and I worked closely across Southeast Asia. The government of Japan is very interested in actually partnering with us on this. My understanding, again, I'm not in yet, so I don't know the specifics, but my understanding of the U.S.-Japan trade agreement is that there's a $550 billion of pledged financing to go into these sorts of projects. So what we look to do is how can we work with countries like Japan, with governments like Wyoming, with folks like Mountain Pass and others who actually do this processing, and the Department of Defense, who can then fund some of this. But what we need is a holistic supply chain. We need from mine to final product, and not just defense products. We need them to go into our cars, into our planes, and that's how you get a long-term, sustainable, efficient, competitive supply chain across the board.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.